In this video we're going to just take a look at the Revit open screen and just get into a template sample project. So when you open up Revit, pretty common with most programs, you have the open and the new, but they also have open and new for families, which families are, if you're familiar with AutoCAD, are basically blocks for Revit. So if you have an existing Revit model, you'll hit open, obviously, and hit new. If you hit new, it's going to bring up a bunch of templates. Similar to AutoCAD, they've got some pre-set up templates. For this and for our project, we're going to use the architectural template. Basically, it just sets it up with specific things related to the structural or architectural project. And I believe there is a systems template, which is for if you're doing a mechanical, electrical, or plumbing project. So just hit OK, and it's going to open up a blank template, and it'll open up with the level 1 floor plan. When you open it up, a lot of times the white background kind of, if you've been using CAD, kind of throws people off. Usually it's the black background, and then in Paperspace it's white with the Paperspace viewport being black typically, I think. When it opens up, it's obviously it's blank, and you have 4 elevation tags. Right now the project is located where north is on top, south is on the bottom, and east and west, right? So the elevation tags are actually 2 different things. So you have the main tag, which if you look at your properties, it won't give you any information, because basically it's what the views are actually connected to. So that throws people off too. So if you select both of them, it'll say 2 family selected, but you won't get any property information because it's kind of a 2-part elevation tag. If you just select the main arrow here, you get it'll highlight the actual view line. So this is the extent of the view, and right now, if you look at your properties, it's going to tell you what scale it's at, the coarseness, which is whether or not it's the detail. So Revit works with a normal, a coarse, medium, and fine coarseness, which depending on the element will appear differently. So like a beam would show up. So if we drew a beam here, under structure, let's draw a column because that's what we would actually see. So here we have a wide flange column. When it places columns, it wants to place the depth, so it'll place the level, so this will be level 1, and it wants to place going down. So right now it's set to depth instead of height. So right now if we were to place it, it would place the column at the 0 level, at the level 1 level, and then it would go down 9 feet. So if we want to do height, and then we want to just give it a height of level 2, so it's going to be at level 1, and the length will be going up to level 2, and I'll show you what that means in a minute. So when we place our column, right now it just looks like a stick figure line column, and that's because the coarseness of this view is set to coarse. So if you set it to medium, you get a more squared off column, and if you set it to fine, it will actually show like a true wide flange beams with the radius here at the web. So that is a few of the settings. Those settings can be found down here at the bottom as well. It's like a fast way to access them. Also over here on the bottom is shading, so you could have it wireframe, hidden, shaded. And so here's what it would be like if it was shaded. And then there's some other settings that we won't really get into now, but a lot of them are for like renderings, your sun path, your shadows, your crop view. Crop view is actually will be important later on, but we'll get into that. You also have to show the crop region, and then the temporary hide and isolate, which if we had a bunch of columns, you could select this, and then you could either isolate the whole category, so all of the columns, it would only show the columns. You could isolate it or hide them, or you could just isolate or hide an element. which means that it would only show or hide that one element. And here's the reveal hidden elements, which will show, so there's some analytical data that is associated with this column for structural purposes, and so it automatically hides those. If you go into your visibility graphics, which is over here on the left on this properties palette, it'll bring up your graphics override. And then on the third tab over, the analytical, that's, if we were to turn all of these on, then see how that was red, now it's grayed out, because that is not hidden now. So if we were to turn that off, you would see that analytical column. Now if you were to go to your south elevation, this is the extent of the elevation, but because there's no crop region set, it will actually, and there's no depth clipping, so the far clipping is how deep that it cuts. So it's going to show you infinite in the south direction, or looking north. In the crop view, same thing. It's not going to crop, it's going to go east and west for infinity. So if we were to go to this view, go to elevation view, and now we just see a stick because it is set to course. So if you go down here to this button down here, or you can, if you deselect everything, it'll show you the view, and you can set it to fine, and then it'll show you your column. Now what we were looking at before is when we place the column, the first option was its depth. And so that was going to set it at level 1, going down 9 feet. I changed it to be set at the height, so now it's going from level 1 up, and it's going to stop at level 2, because we defined that when we placed the column. So you can actually toggle the views. So to toggle views, you go to View and Tile Views. You can see there when I hover over Tile Views, I believe it shows you the quick key feature next to the command. So before I was just hitting WT, and the difference between Revit and AutoCAD is you typically do not need to hit Enter or Spacebar to finish a command. If there's only one of that command, it will automatically go into that command. Now, if there are multiple commands that start with WT, so like if you had WT, WTS, you would then need to enter in the spacebar or enter, or finish the whole command. So here WT is a command, so if you look down here right now, F wireframe is W, so if I finish, T is the trim command. And so if you go WT quickly, then it will do the toggle. But if there's other commands, it's going to wait until you finish the command or hit enter to enter into that different command. So let's turn off. So if we go to our view graphics, so view graphics, I have a quick command of VG. And actually, maybe on this new version, I haven't imported my all my quick commands. Typically, you can, if you hit KS, or I believe if you go up to user interface, keyboard shortcuts, which you can see is KS, then you can add commands. So typically when I do view graphics on my other versions of Revit, I will visibility graphics actually. So right here I have it on VGG, and I can't remember why, but I probably at another point had another command that was had used the VG shortcut key, so I'm going to actually rename that. And actually VGG might be the default command. But anyway, so you can see I can just you can remove a command, select a command. If you enter whatever command you want and assign, it will assign it. Just like in CAD, it will tell you if there is another shortcut key set to that So if I wanted to do this revision schedule to VG, it's going to tell you that there's already something assigned to that, and you can cancel or escape out of that if you want. So I'm going to do that. So visibility graphics, we're going to be in a lot of it. It's like the layers. So if the graphic is over here, you can access it on the on the properties palette at any time, or you can go up here to view visibility graphics and click it there. And if you hover over it, you can see that now it is assigned to VG. So I'll go to my view graphics. I typically have all the analytical categories turned off, so you can select just a few to turn off, or in this case, I'm going to check this box at the top which says show analytical model categories in this view, and it's going to be none. I'm unchecking that, so all this will be grayed out. I can't actually turn them off and on because right now I've got it globally turned off. So then that little graphics will go away. And so when we were first placed this column, CL I thought was the command, but this could be another. Yeah, so you can see down here CL is the command, but there must be something else, another command that starts with CL. So in this case I'd have to hit enter to complete the command. And Revit is smart as far as it will let you, it'll use the same settings that you had last time. So right now it's at height. If I were to place depth, there is no level below, so it's going to give you an unconnected length. And so if I were to do a depth and then level 2, it's going to give me an error that it's invalid because it can't go down to level 2, right? Obviously it wants to go down to something below level 1. And so also too, if you had it set to level 1, it's going to give you the same thing, because that basically would be setting it to 0. It wouldn't be a column, it'd be nothing, because the height would be 0, which is pretty obvious. But a lot of this kind of stuff screws people up in the beginning. So now we have unconnected height of 9 feet, and so we can actually change that to whatever dimension we want. Now you see how it doesn't show up. It says none of the created elements are visible in the floor plan level 1. You may want to check your active views, the parameters, the visibility section, as well as any plan regions for their settings. It's basically telling you that it just created something that you can't see. And the reason we can't see it, it's because it's at level 1 and it's going down 2 feet. Again, this is one of those things that really gets people, because they're immediately your content is gone, and so when you're working on a big Revit file, it can take a while to figure out what happened and where it is, and there's a lot of different ways that they can be items can not be visible. And so now, because the view range is what also determines what you see here. So even though it's at level 1, it's technically, I guess, Revit considers it below level 1. Or let's check. So over here we have the properties palette and nothing selected, and you can check view range. So right now the view range is 0 and 0. You see the bottom is going to be where it starts. The depth is going to be how high it goes up. So a view depth, and over here's a handy little picture to show you exactly what view range is showing you when you're setting a view range. So the view range is this whole, what it's going to start at, what it's going to stop at. That's the entire thing. So the view depth is 6, and so that's how deep it goes. So right now the view depth is set to 0. So basically you're just going to see at that right at level 1. And so it kind of shows you how to see, like when you set this is what you're seeing, because it's going to, you can see cut plane is at 4 feet. And so over here you can check the cut plane 2. So that dashed red line is where it's going to cut. The primary range at the top, so it's going to go all the way up to here and stop. So if you had any elements like the floor, it would not show in this view because it's only going to show you what's in between here. And so that's a lot of times that's why you might be missing an item that you've modeled, because you could have not noticed that that was set to depth, and you place a beam and it just disappears. So to see that beam, we could set this to -1, and then you also have to set the view depth. So some of these work together. So if you hit apply, it's going to say error. View depth is plane is set above the bottom clip plane. So you can't have the view depth be less than the bottom. So it's got to be either equal or more. So if it's -2 feet, it would work, or if it's even exactly 1 feet, basically and then you can see the second beam shows up, because now it's going to start at -1 foot, and it's going to show you a view all the way up to 7.6, but it's going to cut at 4 feet. So if you had an element above, you would see it, but it wouldn't cut through it if it was at 4. If it was at 6 feet, you would see it, but it would not cut through it because it would be cutting through at 4 feet. Again, it's another thing that kind of throws people off, but once you figure out what Revit wants, it gets a little bit easier. So that is a quick kind of what the main features of Revit. What you're going to do is be working in elevation views and plan views and section views. So if we were to cut a section view through here, we're going to have the same kind of issues that we had before. So here, because a section is typically going to be only a certain depth, it automatically has this window that shows you it's going to cut a section from here to here, and it's going to be cut out this far. And that data is also stored over here. So if you only wanted a section that was cut 1 foot, then you can see how this changes. When we're looking at the elevation doesn't have that because there's no crop view set. So now there's a crop view set, that means you see how these little grips showed up. Now that there is a boundary on the left and right, or the east and west in this view. If you were to then go to a clip, you can set a clip so that it will clip without a line. So that means anything beyond the clip, it won't show a line, it'll just show it disappearing. Or if it clips with a line, so like if you're looking at a building and a wall angles away, it won't show a line where it disappears off past the view. But if you have clip with a line, then it will when it cuts off that view, and that it will show a line signifying that that's where it's cut at. And so now you can see that I have crop view and the clipping, the far clipping. Now I have a similar section to a similar view to the section. It looks the same as the section does now because we have the similar parameters set up. And so you can see when I change it to that initially, you're not seeing anything here because your view is stopping 50 feet from this elevation tag. Now you can move this actually separately, so you could have your elevation tag stay outside of your building if you wanted. And if you move it all together, you'll actually see that it'll move the entire thing. Or you can just move, if you grab just the little round, just the box, then you can move that independently of the view. You saw how it stayed there. So we'll put it kind of back to where it was before. And so that is, so let's go to this section just to look at this one last time. These are the kind of the three main views you'll look at. And then what do we have here again? This is a crop box. When I turn the crop on, it draws the box. So here in the elevation I turned the crop on, but I did not show hit crop region visible. So when that's on, you'll see a box, and that's kind of signifying where the view starts and stops. So over here we have the same issue, just lines. We could do medium. It's just going to show the squared off lines, and then fine will, if there's more data to show, like in the plan, it would show a radius one, but because this is all flat, it's going to just show pretty similar to the medium view. And so as you can see, the beam, and now instead of like the elevation view, we see the dashed lines of the web of the beam beyond, but because we're cutting through a beam here, we're actually going to see a solid line, and you can see the hatch. Now, it's hard to see the hatch because this is an 1/8 inch scale, so this is really big scale for a small, just a single 9-foot beam. And so as you can see, as I change the scale, it will then increase the hatch density. And so this is when we're creating our house, you'll be using a combination of the levels, sections, and elevations to be able to create the geometry that you need. Over here in the project browser is where we're going to find all these views that we created. So we created this section. It's going to add a category for sections, building sections, and then it just names it section 1. When you cut a section, so sections I believe are under view, section, and I see I have it set to SEC for section. Again, that might be just the default, and you can actually have some options when you do select a section. When you select any command, it typically will bring up the properties palette, so you can edit what it does. So I particularly will modify these based on what how I'm working in a project. So often I will have a view template, which we'll get into that later, applied. You can set these to be specific for however your company is doing it. But here's so that every time you cut a section, it would use these features here, and then there's also a wall section and a building section. So the wall section, so if we select a wall section, and we can select that up here as well, it shows a hollow arrow, so there isn't a filled in arrow. And you can see over here, it actually didn't categorize it under sections, building section, because it is a wall section. And so if you wanted to access these, you can either click on the line, not on the arrow. If you click on just the arrow, it's kind of the same thing as the elevation marker. There isn't it's kind of a separate thing. So the arrow is a separate thing. So you'd have to select the line where it gives you the boundary, and either right click and go to view, and we'll open that view, or you can find it in the project browser, double click on it, or right click on it and say open, and go to that view. And since we didn't cut through anything, we're actually not seeing any content. So if you were to move this back, then you would see the two beams at the specified, when it creates a view, it will always set it to kind of these defaults. And actually you can change where those default views are under the manage, but we'll get to that later, so that when you cut a section, you can have it cut just the way you want it every time. Like let's say you want it to be shaded and fine, and with shadows, you could set all that up in additional settings, but we'll get into that. So the project browser and the properties you'll be using quite a bit. Unlike CAD, where all the files are separate, Revit, most of your views and sheets were all going to be in this one location at your project browser. You can take this out and move it onto a second screen if you want, or have it hovering over. You can have it docked at the top. My preference is having it docked on the side, which sometimes can be tricky because it doesn't always want to do it what you want. You can break them out apart. And let's see here. There we go. And you can have it stacked like this. I know some people who like to work with it stacked. My preference is to work with it side by side, actually, so I can see both. I typically work with 2 to 4 monitors. I work at home now, so I'm using 2. But at the office I have 4 monitors, because once you have your email and your PDF and your Revit software and reference material over it, it's really handy to have multiple monitors. So I prefer to work with having these side by side, so when I'm selecting elements, then I can easily see what I'm selecting, and then I can go to a different view. It also highlights over here. It's just an easy, quick way to tell you what view you're in. So if you're in level 1, when you have a lot of different sections and cuts, as we will, it will highlight it in bold whenever you're in a view. So you can see it's now highlighting it over here, section 2, because I switched into that view. And you can also pop these screens out and move them off to a separate screen. And these actually also tile vertically and horizontally as well. So depending on how you're working your workflow, similar to like CAD, if you're doing 3D CAD, well, you have your viewport configuration, it's same thing, but this is kind of a little bit easier to grab things and put them where you want it. And I think that's all we'll do for this lesson now. Just it'd be good just to play and get familiar with this, open up a blank project, and just start trying to click on things. One thing that I will show you how to do, well, I'll show you some customization. I hate these square callouts, and it's actually pretty easy to change those to be round. So if you see where it's a 1/2 inch square, I will change it. Actually, you can just make it into a circle instead. It's kind of already pre-done in here. So you can change what family it is, but you don't need to mess with that because they've got some pre-set up ones. So right now they've got a 1/2 inch square, a 1/2 inch circle. This would be better for a different video, but there's multiple different family types which you can duplicate and have a lot of different values in here that you can have preset. You would basically duplicate this, and then if you wanted it to have a number as well as a view name, you can set all these up to be very specific to how you want your drawings to be called out. So basically, here, I'll cancel out of that just real quick. Edit ET is what I have for edit type for a quick. So you select the elevation tag is a 1/2 inch square. Up here where there's a family type, we don't want to change this, because if we change this to circle, then when we change it to 1/2 inch square, it'll actually be 1/2 inch circle. So they already have one that's preset to circle. It changes what family it's using or what block. Hit OK, OK, and then now we have this circle, and it actually gives you the name and number. I'm going to do one more thing real quick. I'm going to take 1/2 inch circle, and I don't want the name, I just want the detail number. So I'll change that. So 1/2 inch circle now will be 1/2 inch circle with the detail number. Oops. Let's see, go back here, 1/2 inch circle, so I did square, and we want circle, filled arrow, let's see, yeah, and actually what I want is, because oftentimes they use different if the arrow is filled or not filled, it means interior or exterior elevation. So we won't use this filled arrow. And we can actually just duplicate this to 1/2 inch circle unfilled. If you drag this off to the side, you can hit apply and see. What it does, and so apply, and then we have our filled. Alright, so we'll call that a day, And I will make some more videos about how to modify these things. And these things are all global. When you change a family, it's one thing to remember is that it's going to be the entire family. So you can change the building elevation. You can duplicate it so that it doesn't change everything. So if you only have this one selected, you could duplicate it if you wanted this one to show something different. But this might be getting into too much customization that we are just not ready for yet. Anyway, we'll catch you on the flippity flip.